Hello everyone, my name is Jane Nicholson-Bith. I'm the Event Manager for the Institute of Leadership and Management. I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. It's my pleasure to introduce Kate Cooper, Head of Research, Policy and Standards at the Institute of Leadership and Management. Kate, over to you.
Thanks very much, Jane, and very warm welcome to everybody who's joining us this lunchtime, and of course to Catherine Nicholson, our presenter. Catherine's a director, training consultant, two companies, one that seems to specialise in face-to-face training, and more importantly, I think for today's webinar, a virtual training organisation. And their intention is to transform how employees engage and develop. So she's very much focused on practice, very keen to give us lots of tips on useful things that we can learn about learning. So thank you, Catherine. Over to you.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everybody. As you can see, my whole world is about learning. So it's something that I'm really passionate about. So I'm really thrilled to be with you today to hopefully pique your curiosity about learning and development for you and for your teams. In terms of the virtual training team, one of our missions is to help people learn useful things quickly. So hopefully that's what we can do in the next 30 minutes. So let's just start with a bit of context, first of all, about the Institute of Leadership and Management. So what you've got here are 5 dimensions that you can see that the ILM have identified that underpin great leadership. And for each of these, there have been some components identified, 49 in all, that really, if we can develop these skills, we can really improve as leaders. And there's been a webinar created for each one. So today we're exploring the 4th dimension, which is ownership. And there are 12 components and webinars that sit under the ownership dimension. And today, of course, we're really focusing on this one here, which is learning, one of my passions and hopefully one of yours. So leaders take ownership and responsibility for their learning. And this is what today's webinar is all about. So 3 things, actually. First, let me share one of my favourite quotes. It's by a guy called Will Rogers, who was a very famous entertainer and commentator in the early half of the last century. He was quite a leader in his field. And he famously said, when you're through learning, you're through. So important, I'm going to repeat that for you. When you're through learning, you're through. So think about it, as managers and leaders, we're always learning, or we should be always learning, because if we think we know it all, we've failed. You know, even just to keep up with everything, just to keep pace, we need to keep learning. So today's about you thinking about your own learning as a leader, but also it's thinking about facilitating and encouraging learning for your teams. And the third thing is about culture. So if you think about what you do and how you role model learning behaviours, you can really create a culture of learning for your teams where learning just happens. So 3 things for you to, or 3 hats, I guess, for you to wear throughout the rest of the session. And let me share with you a second quote. So this is by, let me just bring this up for you. So this is by Peter Zeng. Peter Zeng is Director of Organizational Learning at MIT Sloan Business School. And let me just read this out. This is something that he predicted in a quote from 1990. So it's not just possible any longer to figure it out from the top and have everyone else following the orders of the grand strategists. The organizations that will truly excel in the future will be the organizations that discover how to tap people's commitment and capacity to learn at all levels in an organization. And again, let me just repeat that. All levels in an organization. So he's talking here about the importance of creating a learning culture back in 1990. Since then, if you look at some of the big, very successful organizations around the world, the obvious ones like your Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they very much do value the importance of learning, driven by individuals and driven by the organization. So what we're going to do today is focus on 3 areas of learning to really think about for you and your teams. The first one is formal and informal learning. What's the difference between the two, and how do we strike a balance between the two? We'll also consider growth mindset. Actually, the way that we think can have a huge impact on our ability to learn and also our willingness to learn. So we'll look at that in more depth too. And then the final area we will consider is our personal development. I'm convinced that the fact that you're here on this webinar today means that you're serious about your personal development. So we'll share a few ideas around how do we develop a personal development plan and where do we start. So let's start with formal and informal learning first of all. So let me share an example, my own example actually, going back in time. Something that I was quite experienced in was sales and marketing, but I moved away from that for quite a number of years. But it's something that now is back on my agenda. And for our businesses, I need to embrace, actually, there's a very new approach to marketing. A lot of the old strategies don't work anymore. So there's some stuff for me to learn, but where do I start? There's so much stuff out there. Well, I've got a few choices. I could go down a formal route. So a formal route of learning would be maybe to sign up for some sort of qualification or embark on an organised training program. They do exist out there to help you embrace the more up-to-date approaches to marketing. And I'm sure that would be helpful. Other things that I could do, and I am doing actually, is more down the informal learning route. So this is about exploring what's out there on the internet, watching some videos on YouTube, asking some friends and colleagues, hey, how do you do this? So there's different approaches that we can take to our learning and that we can encourage in our teams from a formal and informal point of view. And both of them have advantages. So let's take a look at the formal learning first of all and some of the advantages that sit here. So when we talk about formal learning, we're talking about organised training programs, accreditations, we're talking about formal qualifications. It could even be things like road shows that you have in your organisation to maybe roll out a new product or set of values. It could be organised events like conferences. It could even be maybe video messages that your directors are sending out to the organisation to educate them or update them as to where we are with the business. So advantages of the more formal approach is, first of all, for some subjects, it's a really safe way of translating information, because if you think about things like health and safety, policy, or topics where it's really important that people get really accurate, specific information, then we might want to take control of that organisationally. Another advantage is consistency. So if we want to get a consistent message out there or a consistent approach, then formal learning might be a route to take. So for example, if you want to have a consistent approach as to how we deal with customer complaints or our sales approach, then a formal learning program might be the route to take. Incidentally, it's generally more easy to evaluate formal learning as well because we know what's happening. But there are many advantages to informal learning as well. So what do we mean by informal learning? Well, informal learning is often self-led. So it could be self-led e-learning where people drop in and out to suit their needs. Things like YouTube, Google searches are all informal ways of learning. You've got things like just, as I mentioned earlier, just asking a friend or a colleague for some advice. I'm part of a WhatsApp group, a forum for learning and development professionals, and we use that forum as an opportunity to learn socially. So people put problems, concerns, challenges out there, and we all club together and share our experience. And informal learning feels like something it's always been there, but I think it's being embraced more and more actually today because of, you know, our access to digital. We want everything now, and that's why informal learning is often seen as more convenient because we can access it when it suits us. Right now, you know, I need some help on how to have a difficult conversation. I don't want to wait for a formal training course. I need help right now. So I can access information, maybe content via your learning management system, online, or whatever. And I can conveniently access this when it suits me, maybe on my commute or in the moment during my working day. Informal learning tends to be more flexible as well. And by flexibility, we mean flexibility of content. So, for example, I can just access the content that's relevant to me and my role and what I need. Whereas with formal learning, all of that is set out for me. It can be time saving as well. So a lot of formal organised learning requires travel. So either for us as learners to travel to a venue to access the learning, or we have people coming to travel towards us. So it can take more time. But both of them, as you can see, do have their advantages. And maybe the right approach is to really tap into the advantages of both formal and informal learning and blend those. So you might have heard of the 70-20-10 principle. This was first coined by two guys, Lombardo and Eichinger. And this is not a formula of how we should learn, but it's what they observed in their research around what information and learning people picked up. So, for example, they found that around 70% of the learning that they observed people absorbing came from just doing the job. You know, it came from experience, having a go, learning from our mistakes, and what we do every day. So there's loads of opportunity to do that. But often we don't label that as learning. You know, that's just doing the job. But it's really valuable. And if we're more aware of the learning that we are doing day to day, it's easier to process, assimilate, and land and transfer that learning because we're more aware of it. They also found that about 20% of the learning that we do comes through other people. So that's our colleagues, our peers, our manager. It could be through a coach or a mentor. Really valuable stuff. I wonder, have you got a coach? Who are your go-to people that can help you, your technical experts or supporters that you can learn from? And then, as you can see, and this is quite depressing for me considering this is my whole world, only 10% of the learning that we get is from formal organised learning, such as webinars like this and training courses. But what's interesting is often when we start to think about learning opportunities, training courses are the things that jump to mind for us, but it's only one route to learning. There is so much more that we can access. So where are we? We've started to think about the whole raft of learning opportunities out there, both formal, informal, on the job and off the job. So now we've thought about that, let's build on how our mindset can really impact how successful all of that learning can be. So as I said to you earlier, our mindset has a huge influence on both our ability to learn and our willingness to learn. And the term growth mindset was coined by a professor of psychology, Carol Dweck from Stanford University, and her work's become quite seminal, very interesting. You may have heard of this. If you haven't heard of this, I really encourage you to explore this some more. At the end of this session, you'll get a copy of the slides, and one of the final slides has some references. A few of these are to this whole idea of growth mindset and Carol Dweck's work, which I encourage you to explore some more. Huge topic, but let me just share with you some of the principles. So what do we mean by a growth mindset? Well, if you have a growth mindset, then your belief about things like skills, abilities, behaviors, and intelligence, your belief is that all of those can grow, they can develop, they can improve. Whereas if your belief is that mindset is fixed, or if you have a fixed mindset, then your belief is that our intelligence and our abilities and skills are fixed. It's almost like it's just who I am. I can't change or improve. Now, I'm sure that you're all sitting here thinking, I've got a growth mindset, Catherine. Of course, I believe that we can grow and develop and improve. I believe that about myself, and I believe that about my teams. But sometimes we have a fixed mindset about something specific in ourselves or in others. And I've recently discovered that I have a fixed mindset myself around something in particular, and that's Excel. Oh, I get a shiver down my spine when I think of Excel. I've heard myself saying over the years things like, my brain and Excel They just don't mix. I don't get Excel and Excel doesn't get me. Now, this is a fixed mindset because I'm believing that I do not have the capacity to master Excel. How that plays out is even when I've had colleagues say to me, Catherine, look, it's easy. Let me just sit down and show you. Oh, why don't you go on this training workshop to help you improve Excel? My response is often, there's no point. There's no point me even trying because it's never going to work. Wow, fixed mindset, completely there. So how does it play out? How do we find ourselves with fixed and growth mindsets? What triggers them? So let me share with you some examples, and you might recognize some of these in yourself and others where you can see fixed or growth mindsets. So for example, if we are challenged or we're facing a challenge and we have a fixed mindset, then we could often find ourselves getting quite stressed out about this. So if you said to me, okay, Catherine, I need you to create an Excel spreadsheet to share with our board of directors for tomorrow. Oh my goodness, that challenge would knock me off the edge. I would get so concerned, anxious. That little voice would appear saying, you're going to fail, Catherine, don't even try, run in the opposite direction. Whereas if I had a growth mindset, my belief would be, okay, this is an opportunity to try out my skills, to give it a go in a real setting. So I'd see that as a positive challenge. When facing a setback, so when something goes wrong, if I have a fixed mindset about that, then I see that as a really bad thing. That was exposing. I might beat myself up about how incapable I was or how I didn't apply. I might even find an excuse, blame. Whereas if I have a growth mindset and I face a setback, well, okay, that might have hurt a bit, but I found a way that doesn't work. So that's progress. Failure isn't a bad thing if we have a growth mindset. Failure is an opportunity to learn. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger is a really typical growth mindset phrase. What about criticism? Often if we've got a fixed mindset about something, so me with Excel, I find myself being hyper defensive when people do pick up on mistakes that I make. Whereas if my growth mindset is peaked, then, okay, great, criticism, feedback, all of this is helpful. All of this can help me learn. And then when somebody performs better than us, if our mindset is fixed, we often see that again as a bad thing. We feel quite threatened or envious. Whereas if our mindset is in a growth place, then great, someone's better than us, we can learn from them. It's an opportunity. So I just wonder, in which domains of your world, perhaps do you have a fixed mindset, like me in Excel, which is something I'm working on. Maybe you need to challenge that so you can convince yourself that, okay, it might be tough, but effort's not a bad thing. And maybe there's somebody in your world, in your team, that you can see have maybe a slight fixed mindset in a particular area that you can help them challenge themselves around this. Go find out more if you're interested to explore this whole concept of growth and fixed mindset. It's fascinating. And when you start to look into this, you can even see how you can help mess up your kids by getting it wrong. And if that's not encouragement to go and find out more, then I don't know what is. So we've moved from formal and informal learning to growth mindset. Let's next take a look at personal development. So as I said, the fact that you're here listening to this webinar tells me that you take your personal development seriously, and that's great. I just want to be clear that when we talk about personal development, we're talking about something more than just professional development, which is really valuable. So professional development is things like charterships or formal organised learning that enable us to do the role that we do, maybe some technical learning or advancement. But personal development maybe includes that, but it encompasses more than that. So it's about developing you as a person. It's about building on your strengths and your potential. It's about perhaps advancing your career or really advancing within your role. But it's that great feeling that, you know, when we're learning and we're growing and developing, that feels good. it gives us energy, it gives us confidence, it's engaging, it helps us to thrive. And it means that we're making progress. And it's really important that we feel that we're making progress. Progress feels good. But where do we start? So if we want to think quite practically, how do we progress ourselves? Where do we start with our personal development, and how do I create a plan? Then maybe we need to start here. So you can just see that my laser pointer is on this whole cycle of personal development planning. So maybe we begin with establishing some sort of purpose or direction. Where do I want to be? And this could be a future role, maybe quite aspirational. But we can use this personal development planning to improve and grow in particular areas too. So maybe you've decided that something that you want to establish is in your team meetings to be more inspirational. Maybe you want your team to leave team meetings with that fire in their belly, feeling excited and enthused about the future. So you know what you want to achieve, but how does that compare to where you are now? So a bit of self-evaluation might help you think, well, actually, I think I'm pretty comfortable with numbers. I'm really good at around that. So I can see where I want to be and where I am, and I need to think about how do I plug that gap? And that's where the plan starts to evolve. So we might do a bit of formal or informal learning or research. So we might say, okay, maybe the answer is for me to go on some sort of presentation skills training, or to get some support from a coach or mentor that could help me improve how I inspire my team. Maybe I might observe a colleague who's just great at this. What can I learn from them that I can then apply? Or I might go online and read about the inspirational presentation secrets of Barack Obama and think about which of those techniques I can apply myself, so that ultimately we put those ideas into practice. So learning goes from just what I know to actually what I can apply. We have a go, and then the important bit, we reflect. How did it go? This is often the bit that we neglect, but if we want to continue the cycle around, we need to look back as well as looking forward. So that, okay, that went well. So what now do I need to do to further that skill? And then the cycle goes round again. Often it's this question here, where do I want to be, that is the hardest? Because once we've established that, it's easier to work out the gap between where I want to be and where I am, so that we can create that development plan. And maybe visualization is something that can help. So let me just share this quote with you. It doesn't matter what profession or position you're pursuing, but visualization is always an essential element of being a successful leader. If you can't see yourself achieving your success right now, it will become that much harder to actually get there. So think about this. Think 2 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years ahead from now. Where do you see yourself? What are you doing? What are you thinking? What have you achieved? What does it look like? How does it feel? And how does that compare from now? What do you need to learn and develop and grow in order to get there? And there your plan moves and evolves towards achieving your vision. So good luck in achieving your vision, whatever that may be. What happens next? Well, I'm going to hand over to Kate in a moment, who's going to share with you next steps and what's available to you on the My Leadership platform, and how you could go about moving on from today. But before I do, I just want to say to you, remember, when you're through learning, you're through. So go forth and learn, get curious, get excited, and continue on your personal development journey. Thank you for your time today. Kate, I'll hand back over to you.
Oh, great. Thanks, Catherine. And really inspirational. Really enjoyed listening to you and being inspired by you. And hopefully it will mean that people listening are inspired to go onto our website and have a look at our blended learning offering, where you're able to bring all your formal and informal learning, all the things you know about leadership, and test yourself. Do you meet our standard? This is fully available to members, but even if you're not a member, you can still go onto our website and find out where you do your leadership, which leadership values are most important to you, and start your leadership journey with self-awareness. See if you meet our standard for self-awareness. So I'm going through that very quickly. Do have a look at it. As I say, register on the website, freely available to everybody. Love to hear from you if you enjoy using it or indeed don't enjoy using it. But now I do have a question for Catherine about growth mindsets. Somebody's wanting to know, what do you do when you're working with somebody who really does not have a growth mindset, but tends towards the more fixed?
If only the answer to that question was easy, because one thing we know from Carol Dweck's work is that it's not easy actually to change from a fixed to a growth mindset. So I would say that patience is helpful and small steps. So rather than trying to change their whole mindset in one go, maybe just choosing something small and achievable where you can help them surprise themselves, perhaps in maybe achieving something that they didn't realize that they could achieve, and they did. I find sometimes it's quite helpful encouraging people to look back over things that they've learned throughout their career and the progress they've made as I guess, an example of, look how far you've come. Isn't that amazing? So now consider how far you could move. But I would definitely say that baby steps, baby steps is the best approach, because what can happen sometimes if you've got a fixed mindset and somebody tries to challenge that directly, we sometimes get even more entrenched in that mindset, and I've seen that happen. So I would say being quite subtle and gentle and just trying to challenge it in small ways might be a good start. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thanks very much. We've had another question here. I think this must be based on your showing us the 7-20-10 observation. Is all learning equal?
Okay, assuming that we mean the 70-20-10 principle, absolutely not. It's really quite personal. So if you think maybe somebody might be in a very technical role, then maybe they need to get much more learning in a more formal context. You know, that 10% that we talked about. And, you know, if you imagine your job being very technical, you're working in, say, ammunitions or something like that, please don't let people learn on the job how to do things. It's like, no, we're going to really focus on the formality of exactly what you need to do. But other environments, it's safer to learn on the job. So I would say that the work that I shared with you there was about observations of where most people tend to get their learning from, but it's definitely not a formula. So hopefully that helps out with that question.
Thanks very much. And I think this must be a question maybe from somebody who's involved in training. Wants to know, don't you agree that the benefit of formal learning is that you can quality assure that, you know, that what the people are actually learning? Because if you're helping yourself, maybe you're helping yourself to the wrong or inaccurate, a bit like you were saying about ammunition. So what's your view on that?
I agree. In the essentials document that Jane's uploaded for everyone, we've put in there both advantages and disadvantages of formal and informal learning. And absolutely, the informal learning, when people are self-led, it's very difficult to keep track of what they're learning. Are they learning everything that we need them to learn? It's difficult to do those quality checks, whereas formal learning allows us to do that. So maybe either finding checks and balances to put into place for the informal learning, things like personal journeys that you can document on your learning management system might work, but knowing that if we need to make sure that people are doing what we need them to do, then maybe that formal approach is the best one. But yeah, I absolutely agree, definitely.
And the final question here, quite a sad question actually. What do you do to maintain a growth mindset when your boss is taking credit for all, essentially, your learning and all the great work that you do because you have a growth mindset?
Oh dear.
I know.
My temptation is to say get a new boss, but no, let's not go down that route. Certainly speaking from experience, many of the bosses that I had earlier in my career weren't very supportive. I was super ambitious, and I didn't feel that they were able to help me, maybe similar to your situation. How I broke out of that was to be determined to be successful and to learn and to grow in spite of that. I'm not sure how helpful that is, but I think sometimes just thinking about what can we achieve for ourselves, and I guess being hungry and determined to do what's right for us might help. I guess we can't stop our boss taking credit where it's not due, but you know that you've done the right stuff, and hopefully your peers and other people will recognise that. But hey, whatever happens, good luck.
Thanks very much, Catherine. I'm sorry we've run out of time and we've got quite a lot more questions coming in. Obviously, learning is something that's really interesting to all of us. And I think I'd say to the last question about the boss who's not really helping, the boss, he or she doesn't own your learning. You've got that. And that is the thing you will take with you should you, as Catherine advised, look for another boss. So thank you very much, Catherine. Thank you very much to everybody who's attended.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.